They smile, hug you, and sabotage you behind your back. Fake people are masters of acting, but the signs slip through. You just need to know where to look. Carl Jung said, "The unconscious reveals what the mouth disguises." And in this video, we're going to show you what almost no one notices. Subtle signs, contradictions, that weird feeling you try to ignore. The mask falls slowly, but it always falls. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. They pretend, but these signs expose everything. It's time to see who's really by your side and who's just wearing a mask. Not every compliment is really a compliment. Some people smile with their teeth, but bite with their eyes. Fake people learn to mimic affection, like actors memorizing a script. They speak sweetly, but can't hold your gaze. What's most dangerous is that many people believe what they hear, but ignore what they feel. Carl Jung said the unconscious is fluent. It picks up on signs of fakeness, even when the rational mind tries to explain it away. The truth is, when someone tries too hard to please you, sometimes they're just trying to distract you from what they really think. It's easy to confuse empathy with emotional manipulation, especially when the other person knows your vulnerabilities. Nobody gets close randomly. Every gesture carries an intention, and if you listen carefully, that intention reveals itself in the pauses, the excessiveness, the contradictions. The psychological shadow of these relationships starts to show when you realize you have to work hard to maintain a bond that should feel effortless. And the worst part? The more you try to please them, the more fuel you give to someone hiding behind a mask. If you've ever felt uncomfortable around someone without understanding why, you've probably encountered these toxic relationships. It's that subtle comment that seems like praise, but actually puts you down, that presence that radiates judgment, even when the words are sweet. There is a type of fakeness that doesn't express itself in sentences. It seeps through the lines, in the silence, in the averted gaze. And the body notices before the mind does. That's why the next sign doesn't come from words, but from where few people know to pay attention. Body language is a silent dialect, full of nuances that reveal more than any words. When someone tries to disguise fake sympathy, the body gives away the signs before the mind has time to prepare the lie. A smile that doesn't reach the eyes, a hand that avoids touch, a body that subtly pulls away. These are all signs of fakeness that rarely go unnoticed by those who are paying attention. The unconscious registers these gestures as warnings, even when reason insists on believing otherwise. Imagine being in a conversation where, despite kind words, the other person seems tense, restless, with crossed arms or feet pointed toward the exit. These little clues in body language work like mirrors of what's really going through that person's mind, their repressed emotions and psychological shadow on full display. It's as if the body speaks in code, betraying the true feelings that sarcasm or sweet words try to mask. If you notice these contradictions, you're facing a clear sign. It's no wonder that experts in emotional self-awareness recommend observing the body to uncover toxic relationships. If that friend always seems uncomfortable around you or avoids eye contact, maybe it's time to pay more attention to these non-verbal messages. The body never lies, and that's where you'll find the next sign, as poisonous as the sarcasm that hides its true purpose. Sarcasm is like a thin blade wrapped in a smile. It seems harmless but cuts deep. Fake people love using it to camouflage contempt and attack without having to own their aggression. It's that funny comment that always leaves you wondering, is it a joke or criticism? Irony here is the weapon of choice, a subtle poison that infiltrates conversations to undermine confidence and to create a toxic atmosphere. And worse, those who frequently use sarcasm often carry repressed emotions they've never faced. This type of behavior is common in relationships where emotional projection runs high. Someone who doesn't deal with their own feelings might fire off bitter jokes to deflect attention from what they really feel. Have you ever noticed how certain friends love to belittle your achievements with phrases loaded with irony? It's a mechanism to try to balance their own insecurity but it ends up clearly showing the sign of fakeness. Also notice the body language, forced smile, gaze that avoids direct confrontation. The body betrays what the mouth tries to hide. For those seeking emotional self-awareness, it's crucial to recognize these patterns. It's not just about ignoring the sarcasm, but understanding what it reveals about the other person's psychological shadow. Sometimes what seems like an innocent comment carries a history of unresolved rejection and pain. And if sarcasm is just the beginning, wait to see how projection can manifest even more clearly, revealing what no one wants to admit, neither the fake person nor the one being fooled. Emotional projection is an unconscious trick that few people notice. The person accuses others of what they secretly reject in themselves. It's as if pointing out others' flaws serves to push away the internal mirror that bothers them. Carl Jung described this phenomenon as a shadowy dance of the psychological shadow, where repressed emotions manifest outside the body, generating invisible conflicts that undermine relationships. And in the middle of it all, the target of this projection ends up lost, even doubting themselves. Think about that colleague who's always highlighting your flaws, or that friend who insists you're overreacting, when actually they can't accept their own weaknesses. This behavior is a classic sign of fakeness, disguised as concern. Body language reveals a lot. Closed postures, distrustful looks, or even a judgmental tone of voice give away a truth that words try to hide. It's as if, with each criticism, a part of that person's shadow reveals itself. Those seeking emotional self-awareness understand that recognizing projection is a decisive step in protecting yourself from toxic relationships. It's not enough to ignore the criticism. You need to understand that often it says more about the sender than the receiver. And if their shadow hides behind these accusations, wait until you notice how much rejecting their own light can contaminate the relationship, a theme that only becomes clear when you deeply understand the psychological shadow that everyone carries. The psychological shadow is that dark part every human being carries, but few want to face. It's the territory of repressed emotions, denied weaknesses, and traumas that insist on hiding beneath the surface. When someone rejects your presence, it might be because your light illuminates precisely that uncomfortable part, a mirror that person doesn't want to look at. Carl Jung warned that what we reject in ourselves, we project onto others, creating a cycle of toxic relationships that silently corrode. This phenomenon explains why certain people fake sympathy but can't hide their disguised resentment. It's as if the other person's presence triggers silent pain, a wound that hasn't been healed. Body language betrays this. Tense expressions, forced smiles, gestures that escape control. It's the shadow speaking in silence, leaving traces that only the most attentive can perceive. And that's where the delicate game between what's real and what's fake begins. For those seeking emotional self-awareness, facing someone else's shadow is an invitation to also face your own. Understanding that another's rejection is often internal rejection can transform how we deal with fake relationships. And while this dark dance continues, repressed anger starts to escape, not as a scream, but in small signs. And those will be our next focus. Anger that isn't expressed doesn't disappear, it transforms into little time bombs. This veiled irritation appears in cold responses, unexplained delays, and passive-aggressive attitudes that confuse more than they clarify. Fake people know how to use this game masterfully because repressed anger is a disguised form of emotional control. Those who live with this feel the tension in the air, even when words try to soften what's hidden. Sarcasm and irony, for example, are masks that frequently hide this bitter feeling. Imagine a friend who always responds with a short laugh and a cutting comment. There lives an anger that hasn't been digested, but is launched like a subtle dart. Body language betrays what the mouth denies. An evasive look, a furrowed brow, a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. These are signs of fakeness that carry deep repressed emotions, fruit of the psychological shadow that hasn't been worked on. For those who want to uncover these toxic relationships, recognizing anger between the lines is essential. Learning to interpret these small, controlled explosions can prevent emotional wear and confusion. The insecurity that's often behind this disguised anger is the theme we'll explore next, because understanding this mask is key to emotional self-awareness and protecting yourself from those who don't wish you well. The rivalry that seems natural between some people often hides deep insecurity. Those who need to diminish others to feel bigger are actually fighting against their own self-esteem. This is a classic sign of fakeness because competition disguises a fear that isn't openly admitted. The psychological shadow makes these repressed emotions manifest as veiled attacks, leaving an invisible trail that's felt by those who are targeted. Have you ever noticed that colleague who never misses a chance to belittle your achievements, or that person who turns any conversation into a competition, even when there's no reason? That body language, the way they position themselves in space, the tension in their voice, everything betrays an internal discomfort masked as superiority. These are toxic relationships that drain energy because the fight isn't against you, but against a ghost inside them. To deal with this, emotional self-awareness is fundamental. Understanding that excessive competition might be a silent cry for help changes your perspective. Maybe the next step is learning to identify the more subtle signs of fakeness, like poisonous advice that apparently comes with the scent of kindness. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next topic. Sometimes what seems like gentle advice is actually disguised criticism that hits like a poisoned arrow. Phrases like, "I would do it differently," or "I'm only saying this for your own good," are typical signs of fakeness, an elegant way to mask envy or resentment. Carl Jung would teach us that these subtle attacks are manifestations of the psychological shadow, where emotional projection mixes with the desire for control in toxic relationships. Many have been through situations where advice leaves that strange feeling in your chest, like something was wrong but without knowing exactly what. The body language behind these words is usually revealing. A crooked smile, a gaze that won't meet yours, a tone of voice loaded with veiled irony. These small contradictions expose the hidden sarcasm that almost always accompanies these gestures. In emotional self-awareness, learning to identify this type of behavior is crucial to avoid getting entangled. Knowing how to differentiate between genuine advice and a disguised attack helps avoid relationships that silently corrode. And speaking of signs that the body doesn't lie about, the next topic will show how your own body reacts to these falsehoods before your mind even realizes it. The body is the first to pick up what the mind tries to ignore. When a connection feels wrong, even without clear reasons, physical sensations, tension, butterflies in your stomach, irritation, are signals from the unconscious alerting you to dangers. Fake people trigger this reaction because they carry repressed emotions and a psychological shadow that makes you uncomfortable. This discomfort isn't paranoia. It's a vital signal to protect your emotional balance. Have you ever felt that sudden urge to pull away, even without a rational reason? It's your body saying something's wrong, that the other person's body language, gestures, and tone are sending contradictory messages. These reactions are crucial for identifying toxic relationships before they cause deep damage. Learning to listen to these clues is a decisive step on the path of emotional self-awareness. That's why trusting physical sensations is as important as analyzing words. They reveal signs of fakeness that often go unnoticed in rational discourse. When your body feels uncomfortable, the next step is paying attention to the small contradictions that tear down the masks. And that's exactly what we're going to discover next. Words can be rehearsed, but actions never truly lie. When someone is fake, small contradictions appear. a compliment that isn't repeated, kindness that disappears when you need it most. These cracks are the fissures in the carefully constructed mask meant to hide the psychological shadow. Body language betrays what speech tries to conceal: an avoiding gaze, an automatic gesture, a strange pause. Have you noticed how fake people say one thing and do another? It's in this back and forth that the most damning signs of fakeness emerge, often invisible to those who want to believe. These inconsistencies undermine trust and generate inexplicable discomfort. And the worst part is that, even with all the sarcasm and irony used to camouflage, the body never stops exposing what's behind it: repressed emotions that escape between the lines. Uncovering these small contradictions requires an attentive eye and sharp emotional self-awareness. When you start noticing these details, you learn to separate what's real from what's facade. And this learning is essential for not closing yourself off to the world, but for protecting yourself from toxic relationships. After all, trusting your emotional radar is the foundation for the next step: how to protect yourself without closing yourself off to life. Being cautious doesn't mean living surrounded by walls. It's knowing how to filter what deserves your space and what should stay on the periphery. The key lies in emotional self-awareness. When you understand your own limits and psychological shadows, it becomes easier to recognize signs of fakeness in others without becoming an isolated fortress. It's a delicate balance between opening your heart and protecting your soul without fear of getting hurt. In practice, this means paying attention to body language and small inconsistencies, but also cultivating the patience to deal with others' imperfections without letting yourself be consumed. For example, when someone drops an ironic comment, you can choose not to react impulsively, understanding that sarcasm is often an emotional projection of insecurity. This way, you don't close yourself off, but you also don't become easy prey for toxic relationships. Self-awareness allows you to create natural filters that push away what doesn't serve you, while preserving genuine connections. Knowing how to differentiate between who deserves your energy and who wears masks is a powerful step toward emotional freedom. And this freedom opens the path to the final reflection, understanding that you don't need to be liked by everyone to be respected, something few have the courage to admit. Not everyone is going to like you, and honestly, that shouldn't be your biggest concern. What's most dangerous is trying to force relationships that demand you earn something basic: respect. Fake people show up to challenge this naturalness, playing with sarcasm, irony, and emotional projections, testing your limits and confusing your internal radar. Understanding these signs is freeing yourself from the cycle of toxic relationships. True emotional freedom is born when you learn to look beyond appearances and see the psychological shadows that inhabit each person. This sharp vision allows you not only to protect yourself, but also to cultivate authentic connections based on mutual recognition of both light and shadow. It's not about closing your heart, but about choosing where to deposit your energy, without fear or guilt. Now think, how far are you willing to go to free yourself from masks and fake relationships? Emotional self-awareness is a powerful tool, but it requires courage to look inward and outward, to see what few have the courage to face. The path isn't easy, but the reward is worth every step, and that's why your journey is just beginning. Now that you've seen what many still ignore, what are you going to do about it? Will you keep pretending you don't notice the signs of fakeness around you? Or will you start listening to your body, reading between the lines, and finally break free from the toxic relationships that weaken you? The psychological shadow doesn't disappear when you close your eyes. It only gets stronger in the dark. Start practicing emotional self-awareness. Watch the gestures, the tone, the silences. Ask yourself, does this person respect me or just tolerate me? What am I still allowing in the name of affection that might not even be real? These questions don't have easy answers, but they're the ones that set you free. And sometimes, healing begins the exact moment you stop explaining yourself to someone who never truly listened. If this video made you think, comment below. Which sign opened your eyes the most today? Hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss the next videos. Here, we don't make excuses for fakeness. And if you want to dive even deeper, click on the video showing up on your screen right now. It'll show you how the shadow, according to Carl Jung, hides even in the people closest to you.